Hi, this is James A. with Full Capital, and I got JC here with Velo. JC, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, James? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, appreciate you guys supporting the conference coming up here in October. You guys always have a great booth and always bring a lot of energy, so I appreciate that. And so let's jump in here, give people a little bit of your background and a little bit more about Velo.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Velo Residential is a third-party property management company that is focused on large-scale apartment properties, managing them in the DFW Metroplex and surrounding areas. The biggest thing that we do to help owners is number one is we focus on making them more money with less stress. And the second thing is we focus on giving the residents a living experience that they're going to love. If you know anything about apartments and about properties and about multifamily, it is all about, giving your residents a great experience. And also from the ownership side, let's face it, owners want to make money, and that's why owners are in the business. So it's important for them to make money in this business, and also hopefully not to have too much stress with their management company.
So, I guess take me because I do like this story. Take me through the genesis of sort of you at first you guys sort of self-managed some stuff and then you started Velo. Take me through that genesis a little bit.
Yeah, well, I started the business almost 20 years ago in multifamily in Texas, buying, owning, and operating my own properties, which I still do to this day. And we've had a very successful business. I've grown it, from zero to X number of units, and have lots of partners and whatnot now. And so the genesis of Velo, which is the third party management company, is that in the process of growing my own portfolio, I built my own management company from the ground up as well, and had a lot of success as a property management company operating our own properties. And so Velo is a third party company which takes all of those same processes and learnings that we developed over a long period of time and applies them into a brand new third party property management company called Velo, where we operate other people's properties. In a lot of ways, the same way that we operate our own properties. Now, the important thing to know is that Velo is completely separate from our own management company that manages our own properties. So we don't, share people. We don't share anything of the sort. And so there is truly a separation between the two companies.
What do you think, the past, I would say I feel like COVID was like the line of before and after that everyone uses. So like, after COVID, it was definitely challenging in terms of, getting people in into units just to lease them, right? Just to see the freaking unit. And then once people got in the unit, you couldn't get anyone out of the unit after that. So like in the last, let's say last 6 to 12 months, what are some of the challenges that you guys have had to overcome on the management side in the multifamily space?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing, and you hit the nail on the head, there's a big delineation between a lot of things pre-COVID and post-COVID. The biggest thing that we have seen, especially post-COVID, is that the site staff have become more valuable than ever. There's an old saying that I like to use all the time, and that is the site staff will make or break your investment. A great site staff will overcome most any challenge and will help your property be very profitable and will give your residents a great living experience. Conversely, a bad site staff is usually the cause of many profitability issues and obviously is the cause of a lot of tenant frustration, turnover, and bad things of the sort. So, I think that the pandemic only served to amplify those things because if you think about it, the site staff during the pandemic were dealing with things that were life and death. We were in a time where people literally didn't know if maintenance guys were going in to service a repair in a unit, were they going to catch COVID and possibly die? These were, really big events that didn't just impact life at the properties, they impacted their lives at home, their families that they cared about. So, a lot of people have since made decisions not to be in the industry. There is a need right now for a lot of, we have a shortage of labor that are willing to come into the office every day. Everybody wants this work from home gig. But the reality is in apartment world, you're not working from home and servicing a maintenance request, and you're not working from home and being a community manager. You got to come into the office every day. And so these site staff that will make or break your investment have become so much more valuable in the current market, especially in the last couple of years with, there being a much tougher operating environment for these apartment owners. And so the most important thing that you can do as an owner and as a management company is to focus on giving your site staff the tools and support that they need to be successful and not be stressed out.
So, how do you vet that person up front so that you know the right person's in the seat, right? Because anyone can say anything in an interview, right? But then how do you make sure that the person you're putting in as the property manager, let's say you're taking over a new property and you're like, okay, you're now in charge of this 200 unit property. You have two in, two out. Talk to me about sort of what you guys do to make sure that the staff there is adequately trained and ready to take on that property.
Well, you and I were just talking about this before we started the recording, and you were mentioning as we were talking that you mentioned that Seth Godin has a saying, and they ask him, what do you look for when you hire somebody? He's like, they've already worked for me, so I already know how they are. And we take the same approach at our company at Velo. So we work with a lot of temp staffing agencies in the markets we service, and these temp hiring companies will have a slew of property managers and maintenance guys that we will reach out to, and they'll send us people that they think would be a fit. And those people will come and they will work at our properties for X number of weeks. And sometimes even in some cases, X number of months, and we'll vet them and get a feel for how they work. And then we'll decide if they are a good fit for the property. And then we will actually buy out their contract from the temping agency. And then that means that we get to have them as our own employee. The upside for us is that if that person doesn't work out, we haven't gone through the whole idea of onboarding and hiring, and then if we have to let them go, we've got to follow certain procedures for how we let them go. If somebody doesn't work out, we can literally call up on the very first day of the service and say, "Hey, this person didn't work out. Can you send us someone else?"
Hmm.
The other thing to know about that approach is it's not just the property management company interviewing the site staffer. It's actually also the site staffer interviewing the property and the management company. They want to know that they're going to have a great quality of work experience and that you're the type of management company and actually also the type of owner that's going to take care of your residents and take care of your property. And so for them, we've seen that a lot of managers and maintenance folks actually, when they go looking for a job, they will specifically only go to a temp staffing agency because they want to be placed and interview the potential opportunity before they go and say, "Yep, this is for me." So it's really actually, I think, is a great benefit for both sides. We make sure that each person is getting what they want out of the relationship before it actually happens.
So let's take one step back, and a lot of owners listen to this, and most of them they are not going to sort of bring management in-house, so they're going to have to choose a third-party property management company. They if you were an owner, but what questions should they be asking when they go interview? Because most people, they'll get referrals from people, things like that. They'll talk to other investors and, probably talk to two or three property management companies. What questions should they be asking during that
I think,
process?
yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've seen now that we've been operating as a third party management company for, a while now is the whole experience of creating a pro forma operating budget is not just about the numbers. I think that's a common misconception is that you just you ask the management company to give you a pro forma so that you can have a set of numbers to throw at your lender or to back up a purchase price that you're going to offer at the property. But where I've seen the operating budget provide really great insight is it actually shows the owner just how much work and thought is being put into how you're going to operate the property as a management company. For example, when we do budgets, we don't just throw a budget on the table. We're actually out there going to the property, secret shopping them. We're actually shopping the competitors. We're walking into the competitors' offices, sitting down with the managers, asking questions about the market, seeing how things are occupied, where they're struggling, what things are working with, any sorts of specials, what things are not working. And so, in addition to putting together all the numbers, we're actually creating a story around what the general public and what the competitors are saying about that market and about that particular property. And so if you're an owner and you are sitting down with a management company, for example, to go over an operating budget, you should take note of just how much detail went into the actual budget, not just the numbers, but start asking questions. Well, how did you come up with, the, you know, the concessions? How did you come up with the vacancy projections? Where are these projections coming from? And start to ask these questions. And also on the expense side, tell me a little bit about payroll. Um, how are you going to staff this property? How many people inside, how many outside? Where are the potential challenges that you're going to face with the payroll at this particular property? The more that you spend time sort of peeling back the onion and understanding how the management company is looking at operating your property in the first year based on the budget, I think the better off you're going to be to understand whether this is a management company that's going to be the right fit, or potentially not.
How long? So let's say a management company goes in, and um, how long before you should know if that's a good fit or not? Like, how long do you want to give? Because sometimes, sometimes it's the market, sometimes it's an acquisition. So, the seller left some stuff there that it takes some time to get through. Um, is there a timeline that you think, because you as a third party, um, you can be fired by a general partner, but at the same time, you can fire a general partner too, right? So it's a two-way street. Talk about that, and how do you know when it's time to move on? I guess is the best way to phrase it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you've done enough homework on the front end and gotten to know that partner so that you have a pretty good understanding of how things are going to go once you get into the partnership and you actually take over the property. But having said that, if you, for whatever reason, may have missed a few things, and sometimes working with somebody until the rubber hits the road, you just don't know. Um, I'm a really big believer in giving at least a 6 to 9 month runway.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because a lot of times when you're coming into a takeover, there are going to be a lot of things that you're going to uncover in the first 2 to 3 months of operations that a pro forma would have never caught. We took over a property not too long ago where it was, a 300 plus unit property, and we took over and we found out that not only was there a lot more vacancies than we had thought, because it turns out that the rent roll was incorrect, and we actually walked the doors. But it turns out that we highly suspect, because the property was taking cash, that there were many units that were actually being leased um, under the cover,
Right.
and that there were cash payments. And so you take over, you have all these vacant units that suddenly are now there, but which aren't showing up. And you definitely weren't counting on that when you took the property over. Now that's going to be a huge undertaking to sort of, put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Whereas before you thought, okay, well, this is what we're dealing with, but now, it's probably 2, 3x worse. So a lot of times in the first 2 to 3 months, it's just figuring out what you actually have. And then from there, you've really got another 6 months or so to start to implement the recovery strategy. And so once you get to the 9 month mark, I think that you're going to have a good feel for whether or not things are moving in the right direction. They may not be completely turned around, but they should definitely be well underway, or you're going to find out that, hey, you know what? These things they're not getting better. In fact, they may, in some cases, be getting worse. So maybe it's time to make a change.
So you guys work with a lot of owners. What are the characteristics of the best owners to work with?
You know, I think that the owners that truly partner with the management company make the best owners.
Okay.
Means that they don't just look at the management company as a third party extension where they can just basically say, hey, I expect you to go and cut my expenses down and increase my revenue.
Call me in a month. I want it to
Call
be
me in a month, right?
1500 a door. Figure it
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
The best owners that we've seen are the ones that are very, very proactively involved and also looking to understand the perspectives of the management company and take that into consideration. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is, a very simple example would be that the owner, when they underwrote their deal, was assuming that they could raise their rents by, 3% in the second year of operation. And it becomes very evident through the management company's eyes that not only can we not raise rents by 3%, but we're going to have to actually start giving concessions because, three or four competitors down the street are at 80% occupancy and just really working the concessions hard.
Right.
Well, at that point, as an owner, you really have a choice to make. You can stick to your guns and say, look, you guys go figure it out. I need you to guys to get this property leased up, and we're not ready to do concessions because that's not something I can afford to do. That's not what we committed to in the business plan. That's option A. Option B is you can, take things into consideration, look at the property management's, input in the data and say, hey, you know what? Let's try something out for a month and let's see what happens, right? Let's do what you want to do and give it a month. But if no results happen, we're going to have to go back to doing it, maybe some ways that I think it might be better served. So I think that the best owners are the ones that are open-minded to the input and the ones that are basically listening to the boots on the ground and giving them the tools they need to go win and maybe not force fitting, a square peg into a round hole, if you will.
Yeah, okay, this is the third year of the pro forma. We said rents are growing 5%. Come on. When the market's just not there to do it,
Yeah.
right? Um, so, you guys will be at the conference here in October, coming up. But before then, if people watch this and want to reach out to you, what's the best way if they want to, talk with you a little bit more, talk with your team about having Velo, maybe take a look at one of their properties?
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. You just go to our website, veloresidential.com. That's veloresidential.com. And there is a simple contact us button on the website. You answer just a couple of lickety split questions, and our salespeople are reaching out pretty much immediately.
Well, JC, I'm pretty sure you've been at most of the conferences, if not all the conferences. So we appreciate you guys sponsoring this conference. And if there's somebody out there who's like thinking about, oh, should I come to the conference, the Old Capital Conference in October? What would you say to that person, or what would you give as sort of who should be at this deal?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're in the multifamily business in the Sun Belt and you're wanting to do deals, pretty much every single important person that you're going to want to talk to, especially in the Dallas Fort Worth area, is going to be at that conference. We're talking brokers, lenders, management companies, other owners, all the different service vendors. It is like a one-stop shop to get all of your grocery list of multifamily items and put them in the cart and check out.
All right, there you go. Well, I appreciate you coming on, JC, and we will see you in October.
Thanks a lot for having me, James.
All right, I see.